The other day, I watched a video by Cassie Dill called Why I Do Not Support the Troops, which mostly chalked up to some hilariously exaggerated statistics of casualties and an overall disgust with service members obeying orders and taking part in an unjustified war. On the latter, that's all well and good. I have no issue with conscientious objectors. Personally, I've always seen the service in a similar fashion as prostitution. Both are professions that, in many ways, can be very dangerous and seen as morally ambiguous. And some people just cannot stomach the thought of performing or, in some cases, tolerating either one of them at all. And they both have components within them that, for those engaged, can involve doing things that a person would probably rather not do. For me and for many others, the military is just a means to an end. No money for school and limited opportunities for proper job training, and a broke 18-year-old finds herself with few options. For me, the armed forces was the best one that was offered. Job training and free education and health care in exchange for a few years of service. And after serving 7.5 years in both the Air Force and the Army National Guard, I think I had a pretty typical experience. Did my time and I got what I wanted out of it. With that said, yesterday I received this private message. I'm a fellow non-believer, and I watched your video on the mosque near Ground Zero. I agree with everything you said. Those people who you encountered were rude, obnoxious, and wrong. My question for you is this. You said you were in the military. How do you reconcile your pro-justice and equality views with the fact that you participated in the efforts of an organization that has waged immoral and unjust wars against people and countries that were not a threat to America? You also participated in the efforts of an organization that has murdered countless numbers of innocent people in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya. Because of this, I don't support the wars, and I don't support the troops. Are you proud of your time in the killing machine that is the U.S. military, or do you regret it? How do I reconcile this? Do I even have to? Whose military is it? It's ours. This is your country, right? We are all citizens, all part of a machine that has segments which have individuals guilty of perpetrating heinous crimes, and the military is not an other that is separate from it. It's us, comprised of the people, our people. We are all caught up in it. Our government, our armed services, our law enforcement. So the question becomes, how does any American reconcile with their country's bloody past and present? Just as this country's history is full of accomplishments worthy of pride and remembrance, it is also rife with horrors and shame that began long before its establishment as the so-called free nation that legally recognized slavery, institutionalized racial segregation, and currently still outlaws total equality for homosexuals. You're an American. How do you reconcile the fact that you live on and profit from stolen land? The indigenous peoples who weren't wiped out through extermination or imported diseases were forcibly removed from their homelands, where their people had thrived for tens of thousands of years, and shuttled onto Indian reservations where they remain to this day. Innocent people hanged for heresy and witchcraft, and millions of people brought to our shores in chains, condemned for life to work without compensation, their labor and their bodies exploited by those who legally owned them. All this before the country was even officially established, and all to your benefit. So how do you make peace with any of it? The fact that we have mistreated our own people again and again, women's suffrage, child labor laws, the civil rights movement, the LGBT rights movement. We interned our own citizens simply for being of Japanese descent, and we are the only country that has ever used atomic weapons against an enemy. Who was ever penalized for that? And how many Americans stood behind those actions during that time? You're right, we are involved in unjust wars. How can you even live in and pay taxes to such a country without your conscience burning you at every waking moment? And the clothes you wear. How many foreign brown people were cheated out of a decent wage for making them? It's interesting how some folks can question the ethics of others with the implication that they hold true to their purported moral positions, until their own actions or inactions are scrutinized. Or maybe you're wagging your finger at the wrong people, because the people didn't do this. Much of the evil that has been done in the name of the U.S. occurred before our time, and since I never actually took part in deployments or mission support of the current wars in the Middle East, I have nothing to reconcile. Why would I? Just because my veteran status is concurrent with legally dubious conflicts? Yes, innocent people have been killed in the Middle East. But what did you expect? It's war. The innocent always get massacred, and it happens in every war. Do you jeer at all people who have taken up arms throughout the ages? Or do you make exceptions for those who have fought for reasons that you think are worth killing innocent people for? I know it's not proper to make assumptions, but with all of that hanging on your conscience, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you're not going to renounce your citizenship and go back to the old world anytime soon. I am against the current wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And in my defense, I enlisted years before they even began, before the September 11th terrorist attacks. I volunteered during peacetime, and honestly, I don't know what I would have done if the timing had been different. But I don't regret my service, nor am I ashamed. Let me be clear, I'm not gung-ho, and I never bought into the ooh-ah, war on terror, they hate us for our freedom crap. And I'm well aware that there are plenty of brain-addled half-wits serving right now who really believe they're fighting the good fight. And honestly, I don't really care if you don't support the troops. But that really speaks more about you than about them. Because unless you look at all service members as being the same, what are you doing other than just being prejudiced? Hey, we're all guilty of it sometimes. I have a tendency to distrust police officers. But I don't really believe that they're all arrogant, power-hungry bullies in uniforms. I understand that that sort of profession tends to attract a certain kind of personality. But I also understand that making judgments of an entire group of people based on a stereotype or the actions of some is almost always an inaccurate assessment. Not every cop is a bully. Not every Catholic supports systematic child rape. Not every atheist worships Pat Condell. And not all service members are killers or support the horror their counterparts cause. It's interesting that you started off your private message by saying that you agree with everything I said in my video about the so-called mosque at Ground Zero. But you apparently don't agree with the overall message of it, which is the overall message of this video. Guilt by association is still BS. Believe what you want, but don't expect any thoughtful regard from me until you start aiming your gripes at those who are directly responsible for them.